lot of gaming groups I'm a part of will usually play only 1 or 2 games, because nobody else in the group knows how to run anything else. Now, it's good and fun and all to stick with what you're familiar with, but there's going to eventually come a time where you'll probably want to play something new. I've been in that situation several times before when it was time for somebody to learn something new because we wanted to play something new, and that somebody usually wound up being me. Thanks to that though, I've learned a few tricks on how to learn a new game good enough to be able to GM it, and today I'm going to share with you some of those secrets. This advice isn't as helpful for games that were originally published before the late 90s. Earlier games tended to have many different complex and inconsistent rules. Nonetheless though, this should be enough to get any GM ready for their first game or two for any modern game. The basic idea to this approach is this: don't try to learn everything, just everything you need to run the game. I've seen a lot of GMs try to learn a new game only to get stuck in what I like to call preparation paralysis. They get stuck reading the rulebook for months or even years trying to comprehend and memorize everything it contains. You might recognize that as the opposite of what a GM should accomplish. GMs usually wind up in this state because sometimes it can be difficult to determine what is important. So to that end, I'm going to tell you the 3 things that you need to know. They are how to make a character, how basic conflicts are resolved, and how the book is organized. With all that said, I'm going to take a moment to explain precisely why all 3 of these things are important. Character creation is easily one of the most important things to know about an RPG. Without a character, it's impossible to play. Being familiar with character creation is useful for 2 reasons. The most obvious being that you can teach the other players how to make a character if they don't have their own copy of the rulebook. The other reason is that knowing what a character gets at the start of a game gives you an idea of what other elements you might need to be aware of. As an example, the game Promethean the Created. It's a game about artificially created humans on a journey to become fully human. It has a lot of rules governing how the world around the player character goes haywire. Most of these effects, such as the world around them becoming a giant wasteland, are governed by a stat called a Zoth, and it's measured in a scale from 1 to 10. For a starting character, this can't go higher than 3. With that knowledge, I would know that I don't have to worry about wastelands spreading too far too quickly. That generally doesn't become a problem until 5 Azoth or higher, which would take a while for the players to reach. The next topic is basic conflict resolution. This is basically how the dice are used in-game anytime a character's success is uncertain. In most modern games, this is probably going to be found wherever the skills are talked about, and it most likely will be similar to how basic attack rolls are made as well. Knowing this will come in handy if you know something needs to be rolled for, you're not sure what the rule is, and you also don't think it's worth consulting the book over. Going back to Promethean as an example, let's say that a group of thugs have cornered a player character because they don't like how weird that character has been acting. Said player character is usually unarmed, since they at least know walking around with a weapon in public isn't how people are supposed to behave, even though they're better fighting with weapons than unarmed. The player says that they want to quickly find a suitable weapon in the alleyway they're in, so they can get the jump on the thugs before they come to blows. Instead of checking the book to see if a roll for that is necessary, or just arbitrarily deciding if the character succeeds or fails, if the GM is familiar with character creation, and thus how stats and skills work, they could then improvise something based on how dice rolls usually work. For the record, the way I would handle this particular situation would be a roll based off the character's intelligence and weaponry skill. Finally, the last thing to know is how your rulebook is organized, and for the most obvious reason. If there's a rule you need to know about, but can't recall the specifics of it, you'll have an easier time if you know how the book is laid out. This one might seem like a no-brainer, especially since most books have an index. However, I've played a few games that didn't have an index in a fairly large book, so it became crucial for me to learn where certain details were located, especially since the game in question had a lot of charts and lists that needed to be referred to. The way I presented this might make it seem like there's an order you need to learn these, or that this is all you need to know, but neither is the case. All 3 of those subjects are equally important, and in fact, one often flows into the others regardless of where you start. The most important thing about this advice is this though. It's just a starting point, something to get you through your first game. Once you've run a game, take another look at the rulebook for things you might have gotten wrong, or needed to be more familiar with, or even skipped entirely. After all, there's always something new to learn. So now that you know this shortcut for getting started on GMing, why not pick up a new game? If you've got a game you're going to try this with, let me know how it works out for you in the comments. You can also check out one of my other videos, where you'll notice I take the same approach I explained here in explaining the games to you. And with all that said, I am Aaron Der Schädel, and I will see you all next time.